thank you all for joining in on today's training. We're going to be going through a couple great things within the Transaction Desk Edition system. It's an amazing transaction management system. I know all of you are going to really, really love the system. So let's dive in a little bit first. Just talk about what we're going to be going through. We're going to keep this a pretty easy process. We're going to create a transaction together. That includes some basic navigation, so you'll know where to go within the system. We're going to make sure and dig into the transaction navigation itself. So that includes adding the details and adding in the different parties, the documents, the checklist items. We're going to be setting up an e-sign packet together. And then we are going to be preparing the documents for e-sign. So we're going through a lot of great items within the system today. Going to be diving in. And finally, we do have a lot of help resources with TransactionDesk. So we are going to make sure that you feel comfortable using the system. That's the goal, is to make sure that everybody sees that this is an easy step-by-step system. You're going to be able to really easily flow within TransactionDesk. So just jump in, enjoy TransactionDesk, and let's start by talking about where you can log in. So you can log in directly from your FMLS matrix. So it's actually a single sign-in option from your dashboard. So if you're not sure how to get there, maybe you're somewhere else right now, don't forget you can select products there at the top to be able to move over to your dashboard. Your dashboard is going to, of course, have all the other amazing member benefits. I see a couple that also come from Lone Wolf for those that know things like Cloud CMA and those cloud products down there are also Lone Wolf products, and a lot of other amazing products too. We're going to be focusing in on TransactionDesk today. So we are actually going to be jumping in directly into TransactionDesk. Once you select this, it is going to make a request that you add your NARDS number, though I know that this is going to be able to be bypassed here in the near future. So for you assistants out there that don't have access to a NARDS number, no worries. We are currently working on a solution to get this bypassed as well. So for those that are like, I don't have that, no worries. We are going to be able to get that, make it so that it's available for you as well. So don't feel like you're getting left out here. No one's getting left out, all right? Once you get logged in, it's going to immediately take you to your dashboard screen. The dashboard screen is just going to be a quick way to be able to jump in and be able to say, okay, what's going on with my day? What do I need to make sure and have completed, right? So what you can do is you can actually adjust this dashboard based upon your preference. So for my example here, I have transactions on here. I have my Authenticign packets. So let's get this adjusted. I'm going to select the lock icon, and I'm going to remove a couple items. And there's just a couple items that I always suggest having on your dashboard, because there's going to be some things that when you log into the program, these are the things that you're going to be essentially doing every single time in the system, right? So, for example, create transaction. It's one you definitely need. You're going to be creating some transactions in the system, right? And so you'll see it here in the blue at the top, and you'll be able to drag it down and get it easily added in. And you'll notice it's real easy to drag and drop items where you want them to go as well, just with a simple left click. So this is where I can select to easily create a transaction. I can easily upload documents if I ever wanted to add that in as well. You can also create and start an e-sign. So part of your member benefit is the Authenticign system. It's an amazing e-sign solution. We're going to be talking and going through e-sign today. You can actually use this solution for personal paperwork as well. So if there is something that you need signed that is outside of a transaction, or maybe you just need something signed really quick. I know there's those instances where you meet somebody, it's like, I got to get a contract real quick signed so that I can start showing them listings because they want to see this property right now. We just met. Well, you can always quickly start this, get that signed, and then attach it onto a transaction later. We also have additional options, the green items, which are going to be list view items, things like Authenticign and transactions. This is going to allow you to be able to see where things are currently. So if they've been sent out, if they've been completed or in draft. The green items are just those list views. So I have Authenticign that I can have on here. the different transactions. And then we also have things like if you use our checklist. Oh, someone unmuted. Okay, there we go. We also have things like missing items or tasks or even overdue tasks. So if you choose to use checklists, which we always suggest using checklists to help you keep track, then sorry about this, just going through a real quick question in the chat there and getting that answered. Real quick, you can have overdue and task items connected as well so that you can keep track of your transactional items. Once you have this set up the way that you like, you can go ahead and lock it up. Something else that we always suggest just getting started is to head up to your little profile up there at the top and go to settings. This is going to have details in here such as your user information, which should come directly from the first MLS. So you shouldn't have to touch this one too much. It will automatically populate items in there like your agent ID and your phone number. Something that you might want to add though, when you send out an email, you can actually send out an item with a signature attached. Now, the signature will automatically generate your name and your phone number. I'm still sharing, correct? So, Shelly, yes, you should be seeing my screen on there. But there are other details that you might want to add onto your signature. I know that you've worked very hard to get different certifications. Maybe you have a famous quote from history that you like to use, or a little bit of a little wire disclaimer or something like that at the bottom. Well, that is where email signature comes in handy. This is where you would add in those certifications or your titles. Go ahead and select branding here to also be able to add in your personal photo or your company logo. So actually, when you send out an Authentisign e-sign packet, you can actually have it branded the email so that they know that it's coming from you. Excellent. And thank you. I see Jacob there is helping out Shelly, so thank you so much. I appreciate that. Heading back up here to the dashboard, the agent dashboard, again, you can adjust and add items as you prefer. You can remove items if you'd like. Next, just to make sure that you understand where the different items are in the product, we do have our navigational tool here on the top left-hand side. We lovingly refer to these as our pancakes. And these pancakes make it so that you can see what each item is. We're going to be diving into transactions here in a minute and creating a transaction together. But you also have other items such as the pin icon with Authentisign here. You're going to have the different forms that are going to be available for you. And so you can see all those different forms that you'll have access to. You can select documents to be able to upload documents into the system. This is not for uploading it to a transaction. We're going to be diving into that here in just a minute. This is just going to make it so you can hold on to those important documents. Maybe you have a document that you use quite often. You just want to keep a copy of it in the system. You can do that right here. We have our task if you're trying to understand what might be overdue or what checklist items that you're working on currently. Your contacts, which we'll save in our transaction here in a minute. And then we also have clauses and templates. We do have a full-length webinar that covers templates. I'll talk about templates just for a second when creating a transaction. A template will automatically add particular forms, documents, and checklist items onto your transaction. Now, I know I'm going through these items kind of quickly. Again, you can select the little pancakes and know what they are, okay? I want to get to the meat of this, which is creating a transaction together. But I just wanted to make sure you understood what these icons meant as you're looking on your left-hand side there. Let's go ahead and head into the transaction screen where we can select plus add to create a transaction together. And you can call this what you'd like. You know, I might call this 123 test lane since I'm doing a test on today's training here. I'm creating items for the amazing first MLS. Now, one thing that I do run into quite often, and this is just a consistent question I hit, is when you are naming this, does it have to be a property address? We usually highly suggest that you use a property address, but it doesn't have to be in the circumstance where you don't know what the property address is just yet. So if you do run into a moment there where it is going to say that you are required to be able to add, excuse me, Sorry about that. Lost my train of thought just for a second. I just noticed the chat just for a second and lost my train. Apologies for that. So if you do have a circumstance where you're working with a buyer, you don't know the address just yet, no worries. You can always plug in the name of the buyer at the beginning and then change it later. But we always suggest adding it as the actual address. So once you learn an address later, and the reason for that, hopefully you have repeat business. That's always the desire, right? Hopefully you have multiple individuals there that you're working with, you're selling properties with them, doing buyer side there. So hopefully you have repeat business. For today's training, I'm going to do a list side transaction. And then next time that we meet, I believe on the 17th, we're going to be doing the broker side, but I'm also going to discuss the purchase side as well. So don't feel like you're getting left out here, okay? So why don't we just create a 411 First MLS Lane. That sounds like a fantastic place to live. I'm going to go ahead and select residential listing here. And then you are going to have the ability to import MLS IDs or import the listing itself over from the actual first MLS. So if you're here in first MLS, you just want to track down the listing that you're working with, grab the ID, and plug it into the import data feature. Now, on a brand new list side transaction, you wouldn't know that just yet. You wouldn't have access to the MLS ID. You're going to be adding it to the MLS a little bit later. First, we got to get the listing contract and the seller's disclosure out of the way, right? But for buyer side, of course, you'll already have the ID. I'm going to show you a little later that, first off, this is optional. You don't have to choose it. So when you're working on a list side, you can always use the tool later, and I'll show you where that is. But second off, I do want you to remember that if you're working on a purchase side, if you're representing a buyer, use that import data feature. Save yourself a lot of time and effort. Allow that information to get pulled over, and then go in, and that way it gets automatically added into your summary details, okay? It's going to be adding as a list agent. I'm going to use myself as a wizard. So I'm going to be using the wizard here. It's a wonderful 5-step process. For those that don't know what the wizard is, you know when you download something, an app on your computer? Well, it's the same wizard. We stole him, and we're using him to create our transaction today, okay? So let's select Create Together. This will take me through my 5-step process, beginning with the summary details. Now, what is amazing about the summary details, if you use the import data feature, it'll just automatically plug all those details in instead of you having to go through like I am now and plugging in the information, okay? So if you want to save yourself a lot of time and effort, don't forget that import data feature when you're working on a buy side, okay? But when you're on a list side like I am today, just make sure that you're plugging in the details. Every piece of information that you can grab, go ahead and make sure and get it added in. The more information that you include, the less that you're going to have to include on your forms and documents. So if you want to have items pre-filled out on your forms, make sure to add as many details as you possibly can, okay? Don't forget status here as well. You know, it's just an open listing right now. It'll be active here in a bit though, right? Next are going to be my dates. So list dates, this is going to be transaction dates, expiration dates, offer dates. So all the different important life cycle dates. Right now, we only know the list date. But hopefully, you know, if you're working on a buy side there, hopefully you got an offer date that's going in. And the hope is you'll get an acceptance date after that, right? Step 3, contacts. So it will automatically add you in as the agent. So you'll see listing agent or purchase agent automatically populate. But we do need to add some sellers on here, right? So I'm going to select the plus add, and I'm going to create a new transaction contact. We're just going to create a couple sellers. So let's see here. Let me come up with a good name here. Edward First, right? That seems like named after the first MLS. And let me make sure and actually type my name right. So we'll go ahead and plug in the email. I would suggest to add this to your address book. The reason I'm suggesting to add that to the address book is that it will then automatically add it to your contacts, which you'll be able to find in your contacts later on. Selecting address here at the top, you can select same as property address if this person is living at that property. But if it's a go and show, they're at a different location, of course, you'll add in their current address. Go ahead and select save. Got Edward first on there. Let me name another amazing contact here. Just get one more added in. One question I do get consistently is, what do I do if I'm working with a contact that is an LLC or a trust of some kind? In that circumstance, put in the company name under first and last name. So company name will appear under first and last name here. And then under preferred signature, preferred initials, this is where you would add in the actual name of the person signing. So if I'm signing on behalf of another company, maybe I'm signing on TransactionDesk LLC. So I'd put TransactionDesk LLC under first and last name here. And then under preferred signature, it would say John Ashley, JA, preferred initials. Again, I'm going to select the different details, making sure to add as much information as I can. If this is a contact you've worked with in the past, you can always add an existing contact. You can also pull a contact in from Google. So for those that are Google users, you can pull that contact in as well. Go ahead and select next. Next, I will need to add in the desired forms. Now, I'm using an educational account today, so some of my items are going to look a little different than yours. But this is where you can add in the desired consumer brochures. We have the Mid-Georgia MLS forms here as well, a couple of them available. Our e-forms are added in, so actually this should look very similar to exactly what you have, right? All the different forms that you have available. So with this, it's kind of easy to get lost in all of these available forms, isn't it? So what I can actually do is I can begin to type in a desired form to narrow down my list to just the forms that I'm needing. And so I have one form selected there. That's just the lead-based paint. Seller's property condition disclosure. That's a really important one. Let me get that added on. If it's new construction or developed lots, I can get that added in. So you can really narrow down your list quick here just by typing it in at the top right-hand side there. Exclusive right to sell listing agreement. That's a really, really important one. Let me make sure and get that added on. So it's very easy to be able to find the desired form, and it just adds it into that basket. You can easily find those in the basket and remove them if you didn't mean to add them in. We'll select add, and it will add all of my great forms on there. I can add additional ones, but I can always add more later. So we'll select next. Next are my documents. And you may go, wait a minute, documents, forms, that sounds very similar. What's the difference here? So a form is going to come from your association library. They have provided it, thankfully, and they made it very easy to access here in TransactionDesk. A document, on the other hand, is going to be something that you are uploading. And so when you upload a document, it's unfortunately not going to be able to use the amazing form tools of auto plugging in items in. But I am going to show you here in a bit with Authentisign how you can add information onto your document, add signatures, add everything you need into your document. So it is a really great tool here. I'm just going to grab an educational example that I use. I have this addendum that I use here. It's just a basic form. I know that you have amazing addendums provided to you from the first MLS. So understand that this is just an educational example I'm going to be using. But you'll just include the documents. Maybe it is disclosures that have already been filled out. Maybe you're uploading documents that your client signed by hand. Maybe you have HOA paperwork that needs to be signed, or some offices even require things like media agreements or security device agreements. So you can always upload those documents, and we're going to be using Authentisign to get that document all filled out. Let's select Done, and this will immediately take me to my transaction dashboard. Again, just like the dashboard earlier, I can unlock this and drag and drop items into my preferred order and then lock it up if I need to as well. You can add a property photo. We had a nice photo here. I have a couple homes here. I believe I have a listing from Georgia. I believe that was my listing from the Atlanta region there. So I'll go ahead and get that added on. You can adjust the title at any time. So this is the title. It's not the address. These two items are separate. So if you do, maybe you start off with the buyer's name or the lister's name. Later on, you learn the property address. You can always adjust it. You can adjust the status of the listing here as well. This does not connect with the MLS status changes there, so don't, unfortunately, if you select open or active here, it's not going to adjust anything within the MLS. This is just for record keeping, so you know where this listing is currently. If you are working on a list side, like what I'm doing right now, later on, once I get the listing added onto the MLS, I'll then be able to import the data over from the first MLS. And so I can go back and use import data later under those three little dots. You'll see import data there. My right-hand side, this is my toolbar just for this transaction by itself. So my left-hand toolbar, this is for the entire product. My right-hand toolbar, this is just for the transaction by itself. So right now I'm in the dashboard. If I wanted to, I could go through that 5-step wizard process again. We're not going to go through that again today, but you can go through that 5-step process again if you wanted. Maybe you got interrupted in step 2. You need to go back and get it done, right? Next, my details. So this is going to be the important information that I need to get plugged into my transaction. And along the way, we're going to learn more details, like when that offer finally comes in, hopefully soon, right? Fingers crossed. Things like school district, zoning class. As I learn this information, I'll make sure and get it plugged in. Contacts. And later on, you're going to be adding in a buyer's agent onto here, right? So you can always go in and add additional contacts. We do also connect with additional services. So for anybody that it's a property-based Go CRM user, we do connect with that service for bringing in contacts. Just wanted to mention that for those that do have access to that CRM. But you can always add additional contacts as you connect with those people. Forms that we're going to be working in here in just a bit. So we're going to start getting these filled in here in a moment and send them out for signing. Speaking of signings, that's our next section here, signings. So we're going to be coming back here in just a minute. I mentioned documents already. One thing I didn't mention just yet about documents. Once that signing packet has been sent out and completed, it's going to end up with a folder, a completed folder in the documents section. So that's where all of them go eventually. Once they've been signed and completed, they'll all come back to the signing section. I'm just going to mention checklists for a moment. We're not going to create a checklist together. We do have amazing training material that covers checklists, but it's a good idea, especially if you're a newer agent, to keep track of all the different day-to-day things that needs to occur on your transaction. So if you want, you can create your own checklist, which can include document items like making sure you got your listing contract in order, making sure that you have not just your listing contract, but your disclosure completed. But it's also great for things that are just the normal things you have to perform, like adding a lockbox, add a sign to the property. So you can add in those tasks, and checklists are connected. Tasks are just those action items, though. Call logs, this is just for keeping track of conversations. Are you having issues keeping track of tenant times? Maybe they keep adjusting the time for showings. Well, add that into the call logs so that you can have a record of what has occurred on that transaction. Just a second, I'm going to take a quick drink of water. There we go. Thank you. So this is a great place to keep track of conversations you've had with the seller. So maybe there's changes. Maybe it went from being a 24-hour to show to now it's a go and show because they've left for the Easter holiday coming up. Okay, so you can always use the call logs to keep track of those conversations. And then history. It's just a great way to be able to keep track of the different changes you've made on your transaction. Not something you'll have to dig into too often, but if you do need to remember what date you were working on something, it's a good place to take a look. We work with a lot of other services. We integrate with quite a few other applications. So if you have access to those accounts, you can always get them connected to TransactionDesk. Not going to dig into that too much just because you have amazing tools with the first MLS. And so I want to make sure that you use those single sign-in options with First MLS. They really are amazing tools. So be sure to use those single sign-in options with First MLS there. So let's take a beat. I talked a lot, first 27 minutes here. So let's just make sure and get through the important details that you need to remember. I said a lot of information, right? So details. Add in as much information as you possibly can. The more that you include, the less that you're going to have to worry about on your forms. Okay. Next, contacts. Got to make sure and add in your transaction contact, your sellers, your buyers, whomever you're working with currently. Go ahead and add in the forms that you're going to be working on, getting those signed here in a bit, and add the documents in that you need to get signed. So we have details, contacts, forms, documents, those 4 items, okay? Think after all I've said, if you can remember those 4, then you're doing really well. You're right there, you're ready to continue on, okay? So after you've completed those 4 items, now it's time to start getting the information added onto your forms, and so that you can send these out for signature. So let's start with our exclusive right to sell here. That's a really important one, right? We got to make sure that they have agreed to use us as their agent. So I'm going to open it up just by a left click there to get into the forms editor. Forms editor is going to allow me to add information like, okay, and when are they going to get this signed here? You'll notice some areas are blank, and that's because I'm supposed to send this through Authentisign. So once I send this through Authentisign, it'll ask the seller to add the initials. But for now, I just need to make sure and plug in all the other details. The dates are required here, so I can get those plugged in. You'll notice a lot of information does auto plug in for you, but there are still going to be some areas that need to get filled in. So just make sure and get those areas filled in. And like I said, those autofills, those are nice because they're going to populate here. That's why it was so important to try to fill out the form details, the details within the transaction as much as possible, because a lot of this will just auto-populate in. So I just continue to plug in all the blue areas. Once you have all the blue areas put together, we're going to go ahead and save and exit and move on to our next form, our seller's property condition disclosure. And again, I'm going to go in, I'm going to fill in all the blue areas, but you'll note with this one, there are a lot of areas that may not be needed for you to fill in based upon what the seller is going to need to fill out, okay? But there's still a good amount of blue areas that still need to be filled in. So do your best, fill in every blue area that you have available. Go ahead and select save and exit there. So we're going to go through that process, getting everything filled in, filled out the way that it needs to be. We have our lead-based paint here as well. So just make sure and get as much information as you can populate in. If you did forget a form, now's the time to go in and search for that particular form so that you can easily get it added on there as well. So I'm just making sure that there wasn't one more form that we should probably add in. I got my property condition disclosure there all added in. So looks like I have everything I need to get started. Next, and this step is only if you have a signer that wants to sign items by hand. Maybe they have Thomas Jefferson's inkwell, right? They want to sign every important document with Thomas Jefferson's pen, right? I've run into all different types. There was one client I worked with, they had Wayne Gretzky's pen. So they only wanted to sign items by hand, okay? So for those hockey fans out there. So in that instance, you can go to a document and use the markup tool to plug in text onto your document. So if you do have a client that they desire to sign items by hand, they don't want to use e-sign, I totally understand. You can plug in computer generated text onto your documents as well. And we do have the highlight features and the other features that are also available. And then you can open it up and you can easily print it out, okay? That's just a circumstance where you just have somebody that wants to sign items by hand. With the forms, after you've filled out the form details, there's a section at the top under File that will allow you to print this out. You can also add watermarks on there if there's a circumstance where you're just sending items over as a draft so they can take a look at it before they sign anything. If you are using e-sign, though, so hopefully the client is okay with using e-signature because it will make your lives quite a bit simpler, okay? Won't have to drive over there. Hopefully they're going to be okay with e-sign. We're going to head to the signing section. And we're going to select plus add. The signing name is going to be, it's going to be the actual subject of the email that's sent out. So make sure that it's something that you and the signer will easily know what it is. So it's, I would just make sure that it's the document name or something to that effect. Okay. We'll select save. Maybe it can be make sure to sign this. So they see it there at the top, right? So Authentisign is very simple. You just need to go tool by tool on the right-hand side. There's three tools here that you're primarily going to be, three sections here you're going to primarily go to, okay? So we're going to start with signings and just work our way down. So under signers here, I'm going to add my desired participants, and we're just going to pull them from the transaction. And when I select them, I need to choose. Are they a remote signer? Meaning they're going to perform an action of some kind. They got to initial something, they got to sign something, they got to do something here. Reviewer means someone that's just going to take a look at it and they're either going to approve it or mark it as not approved. And then CC means carbon copy. This is just somebody that's going to get a copy of it after everything else has been completed. By the way, everybody gets a completed email. There isn't a single person on there that's not going to get a completed email, okay? So remote signer is what I'm going to select for both these individuals. We're going to push select. You'll notice an exclamation point popped up next to one of my signers, though. That's because I forgot her email address. Very easy thing to mistakenly miss. So you can just plug it in and select the save icon. This next item is a little bit more of an advanced feature, but it's a question I get pretty often, so I want to make sure and talk about it just for a second. We do have a lot of people that use the same email address. So you may have a couple that shares an email address, or maybe everything's going to a particular admin if you're working with an LLC. And sometimes it can get a little confusing when it comes to making sure they are signing the right one. It does say hello, Edward first at the top there, but sometimes that can be easily missed. So in that circumstance where you have people that have the same email, what I would highly suggest is adding what's called a signing pin. This could be their birth date. It could be a pre-selected number that they choose. It's just going to make it so that it's an added layer of security in case, in the circumstance where Edward accidentally clicks on Bethany's email or vice versa, right? It's also great for people that feel a little trepidatious about using eSign, where there's like, is it secure? Is it safe? Like, okay, let's add a password to it and make you feel safer about the product, okay? There's other options available here too. Again, if you're working with a trust or an LLC, you should see a company name here. But down here, you'll see custom signature and custom initials will be the person that's actually signing. So that's just with that LLC company name. Again, if you set that up in the transaction contact, though, you don't have to worry about it. It'll just auto-populate. This next item here, again, a little bit more of an advanced item, but there's a lot of people that ask about this. Can I set the signing order? So maybe Bethany wants to take a look at it and sign her items before Edward gets it. Because if I leave it the way it is, both will just get it at the same time, and they'll both just need a sign. They're not going to be able to see what the other person's doing. But in my personal marriage here, my wife is my life editor. So when it comes to disclosures, she wants to make sure I wrote everything correctly. She wants to make sure I spelled everything correctly. She likes that I fill it out because I know the different workings of the house and what the roof is made of and things like that. But she always wants to just double check, and I love that about her. So I would set her up as the second signer, okay? Pretty simple. You're going to run into that with a lot of different people, right? So this will make it so that you can set it up with multiple individuals. This is also helpful for people that have a broker that likes to review items before they're sent out to or completed by you or the signer. So you could add your broker as either the first or the last signer and set them up as a reviewer as well. So that's especially helpful. I know there's some new agents, you're working in an office, maybe your broker just wants to take a look, keep making sure everything's good to go. That's where that set signing order comes in handy. Again, that's an advanced item. The big key, important key note for those that are new to the product, just make sure to add your participants. Once you get your participants added, now we can add in the documents and forms. And I can either select add a document or form here, or I can select it here, either place. By the way, I do have some construction behind me, and I opened the window because it's a nice day. So if you are able to hear it, please let me know in the chat, and I'll shut my window. If you can't hear it, then I'll just keep on going. But let me know if you can hear it. I will definitely shut the window. Okay. It's just a beautiful day here in Kansas City. I can't help it. Spring is finally sprung. We don't have any more false winters hitting us. So, all right, moving back into adding our forms. So I'm going to select Add to add in the desired paperwork that I need to get signed. So I'll select that Add to get the items added in, and then I'll hit Close. So I have this form, and my document. And as I scroll down, because you added the signers, it will auto-populate the initials and the signatures and everything that needs to be filled in by the seller. So that's why those are there, because I added in the signers. If you forgot to add the signers, this would be the step here where you would need to go back to signers and get them added in. You'll notice their signatures and stuff won't appear until you add those to signers, okay? You'll notice some other items are still available, the blue items. So you can also fill out all of your forms here in Authentisign as well. You can actually get them filled out in both places. Next, we're going to talk about the additional tools. So I've added in the documents and forms that I'm working with. Unfortunately, though, I have this document that's not going to auto add anything for me. And so I'm going to have to use my tools to plug in things like their names, their signatures, the text that I need to add here. And so what I'm going to use the signing tools, but there's a specific tool I want to use first called All Signers. And the reason I'm using All Signers is because when I click on full name, it'll add everybody's name. When I click on sign here, it'll add signature for everybody instead of having to do this one at a time. You'll notice my signatures are a little big. I can click on items to scale them up or down. So I can make them bigger or smaller. Don't worry, the signature will still fit in there. It'll just make the signature smaller. So they'll still have the same space for signing. It'll just make the signature smaller. The next great tool that I have available is called Myself. Hopefully nobody thinks I'm calling myself a tool. This is just going to allow me to pre-sign my documents and forms, okay? So I click on sign here, and I accept the terms and conditions, and then I'm going to create a signature. I can either use a style, or I can draw a signature. See here, I think my 2-year-old could probably do a better job, so I'll keep on going. I can upload a signature as well. So if you have a stamped signature, you can always add that in. Let's use a nice, pretty one. I'll pretend this is what my signature looks like in real life, and I'll just drag and drop it. And you can use this not just on documents, but on forms as well. So if there are sections where you need to initial or sign your documents, you can actually drag and drop your signature right there as well. Pretty easy, right? We want to try to make this as easy as possible. The next question I do get consistently, and this time I'm going to move to one of my individual signers. We have a lot of questions about the difference between a checkbox and a radio choice option. So a radio choice option is going to require them to pick one out of multiple choice. They have to pick one. So right now I have 2 options. So if my question was, do you occupy the property? The answer is yes or no. There's no metaphysical, the home is where the heart is. It's either yes or no, okay? That's all it can pick. So I would leave it with yes or no. I can also add in additional options. If the question was, well, what type of property is it? I put housing, condo, multi-unit. Okay, well, still, I'm only picking one. Usually you're not going to have multiple property types. I guess farm and land would immediately defeat that point, but so, those circumstances where you have both there. The next option is a checkmark box. Now, a checkmark box, when you click on it, you notice red square, red star. Maybe I zoom in just a little bit, you can see red square, red star. So red square, red star means required. That means I have to click on this or I can't keep going. So if I had something on here like it's just a singular question that I need them to click this box to be able to continue, that's where red square, red star is. But if it's optional and it's multiple choice, That's where checkmark boxes really shine. So, for example, a question like, well, what is the roof made out of? What material is it made out of? Well, some homes, depending on how many add-ons they have, some of them start off with shingles, then they move to metal sheeting, then they move to some type of solar panel item there. So you can use multiple choice checkmark boxes there to allow you to be able to add and select multiple items. That's where checkmark boxes really shine there. We also have a text box and a text line. I get asked a lot about this. A text box is where I'm adding text on here. So this is where I would add in, my amazing place to live there. And I can make this bigger or smaller. A little section there. Oh, this is in Atlanta, Georgia there. Text line, on the other hand, is where my client is going to be filling this out. And if this text is a little too big, so like if I put it right there, that would be kind of too big for that space. I can use a little circles to make it bigger or smaller. You can also select it if you need it to be multi-line, where the client is adding a paragraph here. You can, again, make it bigger or smaller with little circles. There we go. Real simple, bigger or smaller there. Now, I added in quite a few details on here, different tools, right? Dragged and dropped them in place. Let's say that this is a document I use a lot. And usually when you're on the list side, the very first time you're going to be using a lot of these signing tools is when you receive an offer in from the buyer. You get that offer in, it comes in as an uploaded document. So you have to drag the signatures and drag the initials, right? You got to do all of that work. And you may go, hey, is there a way that I can have this auto-populate? The answer is yes. So the first time after you plug everything in, head here to Layouts and select Create Layouts. You'll name it. And click Create. Then the next time you use this document, even if it's on a completely separate transaction, instead of having to sit there and go through the process of dragging everything over, head here to Layouts, go to Layout Options, apply the layout, you'll find it on there, and push Assign Signature Layout. It'll then auto-populate everything on there, and that's even if it's a completely separate contact, even if it's a completely separate transaction there, it doesn't matter. It'll auto-populate. For some of you on the call, you're like, your minds are probably blown. You're like, you're going to save me a lot of time and effort. I hear that a lot when it comes to that layout tool there. Like, yes, you just got to create it the first time. That's the key. Create it the first time, and then you'll be able to apply that layout from now on, okay? Let's get this sent out for signature. I'm going to go to Next. I can customize the invite if I want it to have a special message. Hey, thanks for working with me. I really appreciate it. It was great meeting you for coffee. I can add that in here, or I can just click on Send. Let's take a look at what those emails look like. So when I go in to my email here, I will have a section here where I can see this is what it looks like, and they will click on Start Signing. So in that instance, they would come in, and when they would click on Start Signing, again, with that earlier, you'll notice I got a Sarah Williams and a Ben Williams, and that's why I mentioned earlier about making sure to add in a circumstance like this one, to add in where start signing, right? To make sure that you get added that little pin in the circumstance like this one, okay? You're going to get an email update each time. So you see how it says signing updated? You're going to get that email each time something has been completed. So if someone signed something, if someone initialed something, after they've completed their portion, that's when you're going to get that email updated on there. And then finally, everybody is going to get an email complete. And that's just going to let you know, hey, everything's been completed on it. Let me click on the right one here. There we go. And these will create links for them that they can click on to tell them, hey, everything is done on this side. So if you want to be able to jump in and see that something has been completed, you're going to get an email. The client's going to get an email. And I have an example here in TransactionDesk. it's going to create a folder with those completed items, signed, sealed, delivered. It'll have a little lock icon to show you that everything has been completed, so that everything is good to go in that instance, okay? So everything's good to go. So that is the full e-sign part. Everything that you need to know to make sure that you can jump into the system and be able to walk through getting everything e-signed, everything added in for creating signature, adding your forms and documents, everything that you need for your transaction management. Do we have any particular questions that anyone would like to add to the chat? I was just trying to see here if there were questions that came in.
Can we make document packages similar to the function in Remine?
So I believe when you say document package, that would mean things that would be like a pre-list of forms to populate into your transaction, right? So like you would have, instead of me having to track down all these forms, I can automatically have them populate. And that's where templates really shine. So if you create a template, which we do have training resources that can walk you through it. So when you create a template, you can have particular form items to populate. So whatever package that you need, whether it's a list package or a buyer's package, you can have those items auto-populate using a template. You do have to create the template the first time, but after you've created it, it'll then auto-populate those items when you select it in. Here we go. So I think Linda, your question, Ryan and Linda's questions are similar there. So that's where you would use the template. Okay, so get a template created, and then after you create the template, then it would automatically add those items in. So you can see I created this template with some forms added in, and so it'll just auto-populate those forms for me instead of me trying to track down those forms. We have someone that's having an issue with their NARDS number. Bethany, would it be best to reach out to the FMLS support team there to see if they can assist?
Yes, I am grabbing the phone number right now to add in there.
Excellent.
You got it.
So after everything has been completed on a document, it's going to send it automatically here to the document section as a completed form, like this exclusive right to represent here. It's marked as completed, right? So if I want to, I can't further edit this. So we have someone that asked, Larry asked about edit or update the documents. But let's say that you had an offer come in and now you need to send out a counter offer. You need to put a new price or something to that effect on there. You can go in and send this back through eSign to cross out the former price and add in the new price with the initials next to it. So you can send it through AuthentiSign again. You just have to select the little dots next to that document item and select send a new AuthentiSign. And that's a circumstance where you had like a price change or something to that effect, where you need to cross it out and add initials for them to then initial that section there. Let's see here. Lori asked, I have used Docs in Remine. Where do you begin? Wish I could have asked this an hour ago. So TransactionDesk, yes. Let me show you where that is again so you can easily find it. So in your dashboard, you're going to be able to see TransactionDesk. So it's in your dashboard. Excellent. Thank you for the thumbs up. I appreciate it. So it is already there, ready for everyone to be able to access. So the Remine files, if you have completed documents, you can attach them onto a transaction. I don't know about I don't know about pulling items from Remine, but if you have completed document items, you can, of course, download them and then upload them to your transaction. So NARDS there, it just to make it so that you have access to those forms. That's why it's requesting your NARDS number. I know that there are some agents here that won't have access to NARDS. You're an admin or something to that effect. So we do have form IDs that can be used. You can always reach out to the FMLS support team to be able to get more details and get help in that area.
Perfect.
Yeah, and yes, you can combine signed docs into. So next question here, can we combine Rainia? I apologize if I'm mispronouncing anyone's name, by the way. So if you click on multiple items, excuse me, you can head up to the basket icon to merge those all into one big document. So if you ever want to merge items together, you surely can do that. Just 1 second. Sorry about that. So you just select the documents you want to merge, go to the basket icon, and you'll see an item called merge. All right. Support. It doesn't automatically when you add a document. So Sally asked this question. I added in a document earlier. So let me go back to that. I added in a Word
Sally's
document.
question was, when you bring in an outside document, like a Word document, will it convert to a PDF?
Thank you, Bethany. I should have said that out loud.
Yeah,
My
no
apologies.
problem.
So it doesn't automatically convert it to a PDF. It just adds it in as a doc.x there, docx. Say that 3 times fast, right? But when you open it, and if you're going to start marking it up, then it will convert it to a PDF. And then once it's signed, it will convert it to a PDF, even if it started off as a Word document. It's a good question there, Sally. Hugh, does the system send me emails indicating the status of signings? Yes, yes. So you are going to, as each person completes their part, so if someone reviewed it, or if someone updated it with a signed signature there, you're going to get an email each time letting you know that that particular person completed their portion. It's a good question there, Hugh. Linda, if we already have a package folder. So yes, apologies, Linda. You do have to create templates within TransactionDesk. So she was saying she already has package form packages within Remind there. So we can't transfer those over from Remind. I do apologize. So you will just have to create new templates within TransactionDesk. But it is a real simple process. And you know what? If I can make sure and send over training materials that will cover templates. And I can always make sure. I know this. I showed templates over to the support team there too. But if we have additional questions about it, Bethany can let me know, and I can always work on assisting in that area if we have a lot of questions about setting up templates. All right. We use Remind to hold our closed terminated transactions. Can these old files be moved into the system? So I don't believe that the old files are going to be moved into TransactionDesk. I believe that they have to stay in the Remind system, and they'll remain there. I don't think that they're going to get rid of them or anything like that. I will say for TransactionDesk, we maintain those records for as long as there's going to be a TransactionDesk. So they're going to be there forever. You never have to worry about records disappearing or anything like that in TransactionDesk. As you close out your listings or withdraw, hopefully not very many of those, right? Then you will see those remain in TransactionDesk. So no worries. Shirley, I know you asked about them moving over. Apologies, I don't believe any of those are going to move over at this point. Dawn there, I belong to 2 MLSs. One offers CD and the other offers zip form. Transferring my current transactions into TD. That is a good question. You'll have to reach out to our support team because it's a cross zip form to TD issue. It's not something that First MLS can assist with because you're trying to move things from zip form into TransactionDesk. They may have a solution to be able to get some transactions moved over, but you'll have to reach out to our support team. So, Dawn, I'm going to just quickly send the phone number to you for our team. And again, I would definitely reach out. Well, I haven't said it yet, so apologies, not again. But I would reach out to the First MLS team for any questions about TransactionDesk for anything like that. I'm only sending Dawn over to our support team only because she's dealing with across 2 different products here, across product issues. So let me.
Perfect. No worries.
Yeah.
While you're working on that, we've got Rebecca. Rebecca says, once docs are signed and merged and saved as a PDF, how do I save them on my computer desktop?
Excellent. So you'll be able to select items and go to the basket to be able to download them either as a zip file, or you can just download them as a PDF just as they are. So there are several options here. So you'll be able to download them or even send them out via email if you ever need to send copies over to someone else, Rebecca. So Good question. Thank you.
Perfect. And Lori, I see Lori asks, is TransactionDesk or Remind Docs better for doing this? And Lori, at FMLS, we pride ourselves on offering multiple platforms so that you have the power of choice. And that way you and your brokerage can use what works best for you. So,
Yeah.
um,
Bethany gave the very great answer because I have only one answer I can give. So I'm glad. Thank you for answering that for me, Bethany.
my
Um,
pleasure.
yeah, yeah, I
So Shauna
appreciate that.
asks, can brokers or agents be able to impersonate another agent?
So if you have a broker type account, and that's where it gets into broker office type accounts, which are special accounts there. But they do have that option there to impersonate just their agents by themselves. But you do have to have a broker or what's called a super user type account. Um, I know that there's going to be that might create a flurry of questions there. If you are a broker, we do have a broker class. I don't want to get too much into that today. I want to make sure and cover the agent material, but let's move on to Pat then. Pat,
Perfect. Yep.
so can we play pretend? Yes, you can create test transactions and you can easily delete transactions that are tests. So you just go in and you can go to the basket to get them deleted. So yes, you can definitely play pretend. It's not going to affect anything on the MLS side. So one question as we're wrapping up here, the question mark at the top right-hand side takes you to our additional help resources. It'll have links on there. And then FMLS actually has their support team added in there as well. So I'm in a test account here in the moment, so it wouldn't take me to the same place. But for you, when you click on the question mark, it's going to have links to short length video content, webinars, and also the information for the FMLS support team, who I have worked with, and they are amazing. I'm just going to tell you, Bethany, they are lovely, lovely people. So reach out to them. They are great, and they will definitely help with anything that may come up. I am so thankful for everybody that joined in today. Thank you so much for connecting.
I think that's it. Anything else on
Wonderful.
your end, John?
Nothing on my side except for you all have been amazing. I love starting off my day with Georgia members of any kind because I know it's going to be a great time. So thank you all so much for connecting and spending your morning with me. I appreciate it.
All right, fantastic all. Thank you.